Welcome to another edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and this is Thursday, November 17th, 1 week before United States Thanksgiving Day. Listen, I got a little sidetracked this week because I want to try, I don't know if it's Marbs or who it is, but I want to try to keep I'm looking at my computer behind me, so I wanted to open up a folder and go through something interesting I've never done before. Get the videos out by Tuesday, and I'm going to tell you this: they're uploading in record time, so there's no more excuse for why they're not. They're up this week. A little light on the content because the only fight that was basically seen over the weekend was on HBO from Monaco, which was Malik versus the Cuban fighter Luis Ortiz. And I wasn't impressed with Ortiz at first when I had seen him earlier on, but he has really been coming along and showing me something. And the thing that kind of throws me off about a lot of these fighters who have really good amateur careers that are from either Cuba or from former Soviet republics is that they sometimes don't look like they're in the best of shape. And when I first saw him, I don't know if it was on ESPN or several fights ago, I thought, here we go again with another guy who's not going to take his training seriously, and basically, but I think it's his natural solid build, because he looks so sharp and so powerful, and so well skilled that it seems to basically cover for any type of. I'm not saying he's out of shape. It just doesn't look like it's the tightest conditioning he could be in. To give an example, Riddick Bowe back 25 years ago the amount of body fat content on him looked very similar to Ortiz. But when he got the fight against Evander Holyfield in 1992, he was at probably the leanest amount of body fat he could be that night. And he never got back to that point again. He got into some pretty good shape, I think, in the third Holyfield fight. But anyway, Luis Ortiz is in the same situation, in my opinion. He's got all these skills that belie the type of condition he's in. He's not in bad condition. He's just not in what I would call the tightest condition possible. And what I'm going to say is that in these fights where he's had, even against Malik where he scored knockdowns and he dominated the fight, won just about every round. The difference between winning a lopsided unanimous decision, scoring a couple of knockdowns, and actually ending the fight in knockout is this. If he tightened his conditioning up, I feel his foot speed would match his hand speed. And his hand speed, it's not the fastest hands I've ever seen in the world, like, let's say like Michael Dynamite Dokes at heavyweight, but he's very quick and he's very sharp and he hits really hard. And that's a combination of three things that spell doom for a lot of the top heavyweights. If he gets his conditioning to where I think it needs to be, the foot speed will match his hand speed, and a fight like this would have ended in stoppage, in my opinion. I'd like to know y'all's thoughts, because I'm sure you've studied him probably a lot more than I have. It just, like I said, I was kind of thinking to myself that, when I saw him on ESPN, somebody who's in better shape is gonna outwork him and stuff like that. But his natural talent is not at all arguable. All right, now fight coming this weekend on pay-per-view with Andre Ward and champion Sergei Kovalev is, in my opinion, a toss-up. But I think of this, and I know a lot of you follow me because you just want to hear what I think about things. And what I've come to determine in my approach to boxing at this later stage in my life, been watching this religiously, not so much lately, but early on, since the age of 11. And one of the things that I've come to figure out about myself is that I approach boxing more like either a doctor or a weatherman, a meteorologist. for those of you who might be in another country. But what I'm saying is, I look for patterns. I look for models. And models and patterns are usually what tells me or gives me my gut instinct of what's going to happen in a fight. The pattern I'm looking for right now in this fight, if you're a Kovalev fan, you're looking at Kovalev versus Hopkins and looking for that scenario to repeat itself. Okay? The problem I have with that weather pattern is that the reflexes, the fast twitch muscles, and the number of miles on the drivetrain of the fighter that Kovalev is fighting are far less with Ward, as far as miles on his engine and transmission. We'll even throw an auto mechanic to this, okay? The number of miles on Andre Ward's drivetrain are fractional compared to Bernard Hopkins. His age is a lot younger than Bernard Hopkins. And there is a reason why he hasn't lost a fight since he was single-digit number of years old, or 12 years old, whatever HBO claims it is. I mean, I'm not taking that as gospel. Understand that, but I know it's been a long time since he's lost a fight. He knows how to win. He's a winner. Now, the other pattern, the weather pattern, or the doctor pattern I'm looking for, is a fight that you're not going to want to hear. Both of them involve Bernard Hopkins. And that was Bernard Hopkins versus Kelly Pavlik. Because I don't think the disparity between the skill level of Kovalev and Ward is anywhere near that great. But the object of both fighters is the same as it was in both of those previous two fights that I've just spoke about. Kovalev versus Hopkins and Hopkins versus Pavlik. Hopefully something in between those two works itself out. And I think that's the hope of everybody, is that basically we have a good fight where the outcome is in doubt, because I just gave you two examples of a route in one direction or another. And with that said, something in between those two is probably going to happen, but nothing worse than those two is going to happen, if that makes any sense. I've laid out if the best case scenario for, if you're a fan of Ward, you look at Pavlik and Hopkins. That's the way you're winning this fight. If you're a Kovalev fan, you look at his fight with Bernard Hopkins, and that's the way you're winning this fight. I don't see, both of them take a pretty good punch, and if I'm breaking down this fight, both of them have looked kind of suspect lately. Andre Ward, again, we've talked about his Olympic pedigree and his professional pedigree and the quality of competition he's fought, which I think is probably a notch better than Kovalev's resume, with, no knock on Cleverly and the other guys that he's fought, including Hopkins. But I think that super middleweight tournament and this and that, I think weighs a little bit heavier in my mind. Now, as far as an advantage for Kovalev, here's where the nuts and bolts come into it, because after I list these advantages, you'd say, how in the world would you ever pick against him? All right. One, he is naturally the light heavyweight. He carries the weight. It doesn't even look like he's carrying the weight. It looks like a normal human being fighting where he should be fighting. Two, he's been more active over the past several years. That does account for something. Number three, and this goes back to Ward. Ward does not look like he's a natural light heavyweight, and Ward looks like he's a smidgen slower than he was at 168. He looks like he's trudging around carrying extra weight, in my opinion. I don't know whether it's the way he punches, or, watching him in these fights that at 175 against guys he should have probably disposed of and got out of there. He looks a little, what were they calling that guy in the UFC, that Johnny Hendricks, like a little bit T-Rex-like, where his arms aren't totally extended. I know that's his style of fighting, getting close and maul and clinch and all that kind of stuff. But when I see a guy who protects himself behind a jab, and then at next weight class, when he's given up height, he's given up reach, he's there's no extension to his punches. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I look for very subtle things in fighters to make a prediction in the fight. Look, I still think, in my opinion, that I'm going to give the edge to Ward, just in more of the technicalities. But I would not be surprised if Kovalev wins the fight, and I would almost say that Kovalev would probably, if he's going to win the fight, is going to win by a stoppage, or he's going to win by a clear-cut decision, like I said with Hopkins. Ward, if he wins the fight, it's going to be dirty and nasty. He may, I don't know how, I don't think Kovalev's ever been hit by 2 or 3 consecutive authoritative punches. So it's going to be interesting to see how he takes a shot from a world-class fighter. And the same thing for Andre Ward, except the problem is with Andre Ward is he's like Mayweather, he's like these other guys. You may hit him once, but you're not going to hit him twice with, good hard shots. So I'm going to give the edge to Ward, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kovalev wins the fight. And I'll be back to recap this next week. Thanks, everybody.